This shows us the dramatic change that we made in the status of Israel in the Middle East. For decades, Israel was always symbolized as an enemy, as an unstable island. But today, many countries say in Israel a strategic ally for stability and security advancement and also to peace. And I would like to tell you, there will be Muslim and Arab countries that will join this circle of peace with us. All of us, the citizens of the moderate countries in the Middle East, are standing in the forefront for advancement and forefront against the radical forces who threaten us and the entire world. A real peace is what we desire, a peace that keeps security and the most important assets to our nation. Something that puts war away, doesn't bring it forward. It is based on an economic collaboration and mutual respect. A real peace, not a slogan. Peace out of force. Peace for peace. This is also a breakthrough. Peace for peace. This is the only peace vision which is sustainable, and I am committed to it, and I'm saying it to those people who saw the woes of war. I also experienced the terrible price of losing a brother and comrades in arms. And I'm saying it also as one who sends our sons and daughters to sacrifice their life in order to protect us. We are a peace-seeking people, and we pray for peace. And therefore, I'm sure, citizens of Israel, that on this historic day, where we are contracting a full and official peace with a very important Arab country, you all give us your blessings. I want to thank wholeheartedly President Trump, one of the biggest friends of Israel forever, for this peace agreement between us and the UAE. And I'm telling the people of the UAE, headed by the Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, Salam Alaikum, peace to you and peace to us. Mr. Prime Minister, first of all, congratulations. However, he says, for the last three elections, you promised to apply sovereignty over the Judea and Samaria. This is what you were talking about. And also people blamed Gantz and Ashkenazi that they are torpedoing this. And until November, and maybe it won't happen. And here this evening, so either at the time you just declared it for the campaign, or now it's not going to happen in your shift. So why don't you stand here and tell the people, I promised, but I didn't promise to fulfill. Your very impressive speech now is wrong. Why? Because I also vouched to bring peace with the Arab countries, and you ridiculed me. You said, what? How are you going to bring peace with an Arab country if you don't have a Palestinian state? Here you are. We proved it. I also said, I will apply sovereignty on Judea and Samaria. There's no change. No change in my plan to apply our sovereignty in Judea and Samaria in full collaboration and coordination with the US. I'm committed to it. I'm the one who put sovereignty in Judea and Samaria on the table. This continues to be on the table. It arrived at the table because of my efforts. I worked on it for 3 years with intensive conversations with the staff of President Trump. And thank God we brought some results. President Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It transferred the embassy and also our sovereignty in the Golan Heights and the legality of the Israeli settlements in Judea and Samaria. And moreover, President Trump also put in the sovereignty into his peace plan. It's there. It's not by chance that all this happened. It didn't happen because people I don't know, people who today are criticizing, did they do anything about it? They did nothing. It's all actions that I did, and I'm committed to it. But a priori, I said one other thing. And if you quoted me, I kept reiterating that the implementation of sovereignty will only be done in coordination with the United States. Applying sovereignty without American support, in the good scenario, it's worth nothing, or it might even damage the settlements and also to the State of Israel. Now, President Trump, who's one of the biggest friends of the State of Israel, who introduced sovereignty into his peace plan, according to my request, he asked that Israel will wait temporarily with the implementation of it. First of all, he wanted to have this peace plan with the UAE and with other Arab countries, but I did not remove, and I will not remove the sovereignty from the table. And just as I brought peace with an Arab country, I will also bring about sovereignty. I'm committed to sovereignty. I'm committed to the land of Israel, and I will never give up our rights in our land. Mr. Prime Minister, since what you call a historic breakthrough, maybe you should have updated your partners, Benny Gantz, Gabi Ashkenazi. They are the foreign minister, the defense minister. So what's going to happen with your future partnerships? What about the agreement itself? Do you have a timetable for the aviation, cooperation, agriculture, or everything else? Or like with the annexation, maybe it's a flexible timetable. We decided to have delegations in all these subjects, delegations that are going to meet shortly to prepare detailed agreements with ease of these subjects. Of course, all the relevant ministries are going to be part of it. There was a request of all the parties not to bring in other people in order to get to this moment without any interpretation. You know, some people are not interested in this peace. I can tell you, Iran for sure. It doesn't want us to continue or to advance. So there was a joint agreement that we're going to keep it as something which is quiet, discreet until the publication. And at that moment, I asked to speak to both of them. I updated them, and of course they'll be partners in the future. What was the other question? Yes. I'm telling you what was the agreement of all the parties, and I did accordingly. You know, many times agreements came about this way. Usually the peace agreement and peace accords came about in the same way. Prime Minister, two questions. First of all, the UAE are talking all the time about the suspension of the annexation, not temporarily, they say. And the other things, they say that it still maintains the solution of two states. With this festive atmosphere, are you going to support again the two-state solution, and what are the implications to the annexations? And another question. No, just two questions, that's it. And not bringing in Gantz and Ashkenazi, is that because you're thinking of elections? You asked so many things. I'll try to answer each one. Unequivocally, there's a request to temporarily suspend. That is my summary with the United States. What other people say is something else, but this is the truth. Temporarily suspend. And it's not off the table, not as far as I'm concerned. And please go and ask the White House. I think it's quite clear. As for the Trump plan, yes, I'm committed to it. I think this is the only first realistic plan that came since the Six-Day War to a real peace accord that you can live with. It takes away some of the authorities from the Palestinian side, he leaves the security completely in our hands, or the airspace is in our hands, and also security borders, practical borders in our hands. And it says that there'll be an annexation of quite a few areas in Judea, Samaria. It's all there in the plan. That's why I want to tell you, in my opinion, this is the only realistic plan. Nobody is going to evacuate hundreds of thousands of Jewish people or take people from their villages. So nothing has changed, neither in my commitment or in this plan, and it doesn't change anything. You can define it as a Palestinian state. Other people can call it other things. I'm not defining. I'm just, on the contrary, I'm saying what's important is the essence, not the labels. And the essence replies many requests of Israel that has never been done before. Do we have a political date? No. We are working on it methodically for a long time. People who talk about it do not know the developments. How much we invested, how much I invested in it. And I want to tell you that parallelly I'll also invest in other things. And there is a certain advancement, even positive, in the conversations between us and blue and white. And I hope it'll come to be. Mr. Prime Minister, first of all, chapeau for a very important political achievement. A lot of the people in the right are not very happy this evening, because for that they say that you postponed a much more important political step, which is sovereignty. The second question, what was the involvement of blue and white, Ashkenazi, Gantz, in this political step? Look, I did not suspend anything. I was asked by President Trump, a great friend of us, who did a lot for the settlements, and also for things that are very important to us, as I described, the Golan Heights, applying the sovereignty into the peace plan. These things have never happened in such a scope. Nobody did, but he asked. It's not that I came and told him, I volunteer for a peace accord. It's not this way. He requested their request of the President Trump and his staff. They asked, and he asked a temporary suspension, unequivocally, temporary suspension, so they can advance it, and that's what it's going to be. Prime Minister, first of all, another word regarding the sovereignty. The Americans are the ones who put you on top of the tree, excuse the expression, and now they ask to suspend. Do you have any summation with them when it's going to happen? After the elections in the States, they have a date, because, I don't know, maybe you're upset with them, I don't know. And another question, you said about a full peace, but all sorts of things that the Emirates are saying. They said it's just the beginning of a process. The commitment is to full normalization, and I can tell you I don't want to set a date. As I said, I never set a date. I said we're going to have full peace accords with Arab countries without going back to 67 borders, removing settlements. We'll do things that the left always said that we'll never be able to do that without it. I never set a date, but I told you it's going to happen. And now I tell you that the annexation is going to happen as well. And in my opinion, there's a very good chance that also additional states will join this peace circle. Mr. Netanyahu, there are people in Israel who don't believe you. You spoke about annexation, you didn't fulfill it. You spoke about a biannual budget, and now you're talking about 1 year budget. You said that you're going to respect the rotation. So what are your promises worth? And also I wanted to ask, do you agree with the statement of your wife, Mrs. Netanyahu, that she's a battered wife and that her children are battered and that she went through sexual harassment? If I ever said fake news, it's exactly what it is. You wanted to allude by that the terrible damage to my wife and my son, those attacks, those specific calls to murder them and to rape my wife, as if this thing you tried to somehow attach it to me. I am not surprised. I am going to treat it as a joke, but I think that the state of Israel, the citizens of Israel, saw that I spoke not just once about peace with force, peace for peace, not dismantling the settlements, part of applying sovereignty on large areas in Judea, Samaria. And I spoke about it as part of a peace plan. Nobody else brought it, but I also work on the peace agreements with other Arab countries. I work on it sometimes by myself. Nobody knows, but people do know. Those who have to know do know. I've been working on it for years. Do I start to tell you now where I was in the Middle East? Do you want me to tell you what deeds I did? How I had to convince leaders, convince them that they have to leave this narrative that is already obsolete, that Israel is going to reduce itself to Tel Aviv, will shut its eyes and give the whole area to a radical Palestinian regime to get peace. I told him, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And what I said and what I promised, all my promises to the Israeli public and to myself and to my historic commitment, I fulfill it. I fulfill it double time. Prime Minister, had we gone to a very narrow government with Yamina, a right-wing government, maybe we wouldn't reach this historic day because we would now deal with the sovereignty. I don't think anybody would give up such a peace agreement, and I did not give up the settlement, the sovereignty. The great achievement is not just to criticize, from the tribune. But it wasn't there, I remind you, until I went into this. All the peace agreements were clear. Israel withdrew, maybe left 3% here and there, retreated, even they sometimes wanted to give back the Wailing Wall. Who dreamt that the President of the United States will bring an official plan that gives us all the good things that we're getting? I changed it. Who ever dreamt that there can be a peace agreement with an Arab country without withdrawing and establishing a Palestinian state and withdraw to the 67 border? Who dreamt about the relations that we have with Khartoum, Sudan, where they negated Israel altogether? Everything is changing. And I met with the president of Sudan, and I was in Oman, and I met with other leaders in the Arab world and the Muslim world. The list is much longer than what you think. I invest in that in completely different perception, and the perception is that we don't get these peace agreements. And I know that people say other things, but what is done in secret, inside the room, what I tell the Muslim and Arab leaders, I tell them that the peace in Israel is worthwhile for you because Israel is strong. You cannot want Israel to turn itself from a strong country to a country that fights for its life. These conversations that one day will be published change the picture. The policy I changed. They see the power that we show here in the area. I don't hesitate to stand erect to Iran. And if need be, I can go against the entire world. I did it. This really impresses them. And therefore, the change that came, it came because of a result of the policy that I promised and I fulfilled. Peace out of force. Peace for peace.
Well, today we usher in a new era of peace between Israel and the Arab world. I just came from an historic virtual conference between myself, President Donald Trump, and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed of the United Arab Emirates. We announced the establishment of a full and formal peace between Israel and the UAE. It includes the mutual opening of embassies, direct flights, and many, many other bilateral agreements. This is the greatest advancements toward peace between Israel and the Arab world in the last 26 years, and it marks the third formal peace between Israel and an Arab nation. In 1979, we made Prime Minister Menachem Begin made peace with Egypt. In 1994, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin signed a peace treaty with Jordan. And today I'm honored to announce a formal peace agreement with the United States, with the United Arab Emirates. I believe there's a good chance we will soon see more Arab countries joining this expanding circle of peace. I want to thank President Trump for his critical help in brokering this historic accord. And I want to thank him for his revolutionary vision for peace, which is the most realistic and important formula for peace in the region. President Trump's Middle East plan served as a basis for today's historic peace announcement. Israel and the UAE are two of the most advanced countries in the world. Together, we'll transform the region and forge an even better future for our people. This is a future of peace, a future of security, and a future of prosperity. I've always believed that we could establish peace with the Arab world, and I've been working towards that lofty goal for decades. You may not know it, but I've been doing it all the time, in meetings that are publicized and in many that are not. In Washington, in the Middle East, in daylight, and in nighttime. In recent years, Israel, under my leadership, has made advancement with ties with such countries as Sudan, Oman, Bahrain, and other nations in the Gulf. I have reason to be very optimistic that today's announcement with the UAE will be followed by more Arab nations joining our region's circle of peace. And to the people of Abu Dhabi and its leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, I say, Salam alaikum, Shalom aleichem, peace unto thee, peace unto all of us. Thank you.
We have just heard Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announce a historic peace agreement between Israel and the United